Okay, then in the same chapter of Isaiah, we come to another passage the LDS use to say that the Book of Mormon is mentioned in the Bible. It's in Isaiah 29, 11 through 12, and it reads, I'm not going to read this right now. Let me just tell you the story. Martin Harris was helping Joseph Smith translate the Book of Mormon, and this is how the story goes. Joseph Smith wrote some characters down, and Martin Harris went to Columbia University, New York City, and he meets a Dr. Charles Anton. And he takes these characters, and he shows them to Anton, and Anton's supposedly quotes, a passage, not even knowing it, from Isaiah that says, I can't understand these translations because I can't read a sealed book. Now, this is a rewritten history that the LDS people brought forward as though it was fulfilling a prophecy in Isaiah. When Martin Harris was helping him translate this, Professor Anton denies that this conversation ever went the way Harris said, but Harris gave a report and the church uses it as a fulfillment of Isaiah. So there are several problems with the LDS using these verses in Isaiah, and let me tell you what they are. This is the passage. It says, "And the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned, saying, Read this, I pray thee. And he saith, I cannot, for it is sealed. And the book is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, Read this, I pray thee. And he saith, I am not learned." That's the whole context of the passage, okay? So what the LDS do, look at the first line in Isaiah. It says, "And the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed." What Isaiah is saying is that the visions that were coming to Israel were not discernible to them any longer, and that these visions had become unto them sort of like a book that is sealed. They can't read it. They can't understand the visions. And because he says, this vision is come unto you as the words of a book that is sealed. This has nothing to do with a book that is sealed up called the Book of Mormon. Isaiah was not in any way speaking of this exchange between Martin Harris and Professor Anton at Columbia University. I mean, listen to this. Just listen to this logic. They tried to take a second-hand conversation between Martin Harris and a professor at Columbia University, twist it to make it fit some vague scripture in Isaiah, and say that this was the fulfillment of scripture, and that Isaiah was actually talking about a professor at Columbia University in New York City. And yet, LDS apostle LeGrand Richards says that Martin Harris' talk with Professor Anton was exactly what Isaiah was talking about. He actually said, quote, "Professor Anton did not realize he was literally fulfilling prophecy of Isaiah," end quote. My Lord, how can they twist the scripture like this? Just sit down and examine the story that Martin Harris said of the meeting with Professor Anton, and then reread the passage in question. Problem number one. According to Martin Harris, Professor Anton said the translation of the book was correct. Okay, Harris comes back and said, this professor said the translation was correct, but the Isaiah passage states that the learned could not translate the vision. Okay, there's the first problem. Problem number two, the Isaiah passage has the versions going first to the learned and then to the unlearned, neither of which could comprehend the vision. In LDS presentation, the book first went to the unlearned, Joseph Smith, and then it went to the learned, Professor Anton, only to have the unlearned come back and translate it, which Isaiah never says was part of the scripture, okay? And the Isaiah account tells us that the visions will be presented to the learned, and the learned will say, I can't read an unsealed book. It says nothing about a translation of anything coming forth. Reread this passage and think.